Hi, hello everyone. My name is Mzeda Rotondo, your CP lecture. Um, Today I want us to deal with the CP theory part and also a little bit of practical, but in a theory way. Now, you know that in PCP you learn about database. So also when you come to CP, database continues, but there are some few changes. But before we speak of the few changes that will be on the database, let's talk about the concept that is found on PCP that you will also have to apply it on a CP. Now, one thing you need to know is that the fields that you did on PCP, they will also continue in a CP. They will be there as well. The records, the role that are inside the tables, they will also continue. The tables, the keys, as well as the relationship, the primary relationship, the foreign keys, the primary keys, and then on the relationship part, we are speaking of one to one, one to many, those ones, so they will repeat again. Now, on the theory part of CP, when it comes to database, there are two types of approach. There is an approach that we call it top-down approach, where you use ERD to design entity relationship diagram, and there is what we call it a bottom-up approach, where you will use the normalization, those two NF, one NF, three NF, normal, the and then now when we're still on that, when we speak about a database in CP, there are only four keys found. It's the primary key, the foreign key, the composite key, as well as the candidate key, of which sometimes they call it an alternate key. Now, there are only three relationships that are found in CP. You need to know that one. It's one to one, one to many, and many to many relationship. Now, just bear in mind or remind yourself when it comes to the definitions and the explanations of those things that you did on CP, on PCP, that will repeat as well on CP. Like a table, what is a table? A collection of fields and the records. The row in a table is the what is the records. You see, like the fields are the attributes of the entities, the keys are the combinations of the field that identifies the record in a table. A relationship, a way of joining a related table. And SQL, it's a query that we use to ask a question on a database. So now let's get down with the real deal. Now, when you code in CP, you are to use what we call it a connection. Now, what is a connection if you are going to use a connection? A connection, it's an objective that we use to establish a connection between a database and also a visual basic. So there is a database that you've created using MS Access, and there is a project that you've created on your Visual Studio. So you need to connect these two. When you connect them, you will use a connection. And then from creating a connection, you will have to come to what we call it a command. Now, what is a command? A command is an object that we use to query the database. It helps us to go and retrieve the information from the database coming back to the VB, as well as we also use delete, update, and insert, whereby we'll be inserting inside a database. Now, a summary of a code inside in a word, it's in this way. Let me just give you in a summary way. A connection with database provider, you will use an OLEDDB or OLEDB. Now, command as new OLEDDB command, as well as instantiating the new data table. Now, let me give you as an example name. dim str db mosina ss3 assigned to inverted commas and then you will start with your capital letter P for provider, assign again, come with this, start with the capital letter M, and then Microsoft dot jet dot oledb dot 4.0. Now this 4.0, it will help us to know which version of MS Access you are using when you are locating the file. Now, so simple words, when you do the database, you open the connection, you use the try catch method to code inside, you use the execute dot reader with the brackets to request the data, you save the data in a table, you close your connection, and therefore you load the data into the controlled. Now when you display normally on a CP, we use what we call it you know that everything we use shortcuts, right? DGV, it will be standing for data grid view. That's where we display our information when it comes to CP database. Now, data provider, which data provider are we going to use when we go for data provider? Now, these are the questions that will come in paper 1. You will be asked for the data provider that we are going to be using, and it's gonna be Microsoft. Now, the data source is the location where the data is stored. Then you will give where the data is stored, and then after the data source, you will assign, and then you will give the name of the MS project dot mdb if it's a Microsoft database. Now, I checked the previous question papers when it comes to paper 2. The 14 March 2019, they brought the database of select, and 28 November 2019, they brought the database of insert